9 behaviors that will silently show their value to people. Not louder, not more dramatic, not more impressive, silent. And that is precisely what makes them powerful. There is a quiet frustration many people carry. You work, you think, you improve, yet you feel overlooked, misread, undervalued. So you explain more, you defend more, you try to make your effort visible. And the more you attempt to prove your worth, the more something inside you tightens. Because deep down, you sense that value should not need constant advertisement. The paradox is uncomfortable. The more you chase recognition, the more it seems to slip away. The more you seek validation, the more dependent you feel on it. The more you justify yourself, the less stable you appear. It feels unfair, but it reveals something essential. Value does not grow through noise. It grows through structure. Most people attempt to increase their value by amplifying their presence, speaking more, posting more, defending more, reacting more. But emotional volume does not equal weight. In fact, the opposite is often true. The person who reacts to everything seems light. The person who filters reactions appears grounded. Stoicism does not teach you how to impress people. It teaches you how to govern yourself. And when self-governance becomes consistent, something changes in how you are perceived. Not because you are performing differently, but because you are internally stable, calm under pressure, measured under criticism, unmoved by small provocations. Value is not declared. It is detected. It is observed over time through conduct, through restraint, through clarity, through consistency. The person who does not rush to defend every point, the person who does not crumble under minor disrespect, the person who does not beg for agreement, that person carries a different presence. This is not manipulation. It is discipline. It is the understanding that you do not control how people see you, but you control the structure of the person they observe. And when that structure is solid, explanation becomes unnecessary. Before we speak about behaviors that signal value, you must recognize where value is being diluted. Because many leaks are subtle, and they begin with one common habit that most people mistake for strength: explaining yourself too quickly. One of the fastest ways to dilute perceived value is the habit of over-explaining. The moment someone questions you, you rush to justify. The moment there is silence, you fill it. The moment someone seems unsure about your decision, you begin defending it before they even attack. It feels responsible. It feels transparent. It feels mature. But beneath that impulse, there is often something more fragile: the need to be understood immediately, the fear of being misjudged, the anxiety that if you do not clarify everything, you will lose credibility. The Stoics would ask a simple question: what is within your control here? Your conduct is, your reasoning is, your decision is. But whether others instantly approve or fully understand is not. When you rush to explain, you are trying to control perception. And perception is external. Over-justification sends a subtle signal. It communicates internal negotiation. It suggests that you are not entirely settled in your own judgment. The more you attempt to secure agreement, the more you reveal that agreement matters deeply to you. And dependence weakens authority. This does not mean silence at all times. It means measured speech. Speak when explanation is necessary. Clarify when clarity serves purpose. But do not defend your position out of discomfort alone. If your reasoning is sound, It does not collapse under temporary misunderstanding. Consider how often you explain decisions that require no approval. How often you justify boundaries that are reasonable. How often you elaborate to prevent discomfort. Each unnecessary explanation leaks a small amount of internal confidence. Breaking this habit requires tolerance for misinterpretation. Not every opinion about you needs correction. Not every doubt requires response. Let your actions speak. Let time reveal consistency. People observe more than they admit. When you stop negotiating your worth through explanation, your presence shifts. There is weight in restraint. There is authority in composure. And that shift begins by resisting the urge to prove yourself in every moment. Reacting emotionally to minor disrespect. Few things test inner stability like small acts of disrespect. A dismissive comment, a sarcastic tone, a look that suggests doubt. These moments are subtle, but they ignite something immediate. The impulse to correct, to confront, to restore balance instantly. It feels justified. You tell yourself you are defending your dignity. You believe silence would signal weakness. So you react. You raise your tone. You sharpen your words. You prove that you will not tolerate disrespect. And in doing so, you often amplify something that would have faded on its own. The Stoics observed a critical principle. What disturbs you reveals what controls you. If a minor offense destabilizes your composure, it exposes sensitivity. And sensitivity, when visible, reduces perceived weight. Emotional volume does not create authority. It erodes it. This does not mean accepting genuine injustice passively. It means discerning between real threats and ego bruises. Most small provocations are not attacks on your character. They are reflections of the other person's state, mood, or insecurity. When you react immediately, you enter their emotional field. Consider the person who remains calm under slight tension, who does not rush to defend every comment, who does not match sarcasm with sarcasm. That composure signals something powerful: internal control. Stability under minor pressure creates an impression of depth. Breaking this pattern requires pause. When disrespect appears, ask yourself, is this worth my emotional energy? Does responding improve the situation, or does it merely satisfy my pride? That brief moment of reflection shifts the dynamic entirely. You do not control how others behave. You control how you respond. When you choose restraint instead of impulse, you display discipline. When you refuse to escalate minor friction, you demonstrate proportion. And proportion is strength. Seeking immediate validation, there is a subtle behavior that weakens presence without you noticing. The need for immediate validation. You share an idea and look for approval. You make a decision and wait for reassurance. You speak and scan faces for agreement. It is almost automatic, and it quietly communicates dependence. Validation feels comforting. It reduces uncertainty. It confirms that you are aligned with others. But when you require it consistently, you shift your center outward. Your stability becomes tied to external reaction, and anything tied to external reaction becomes fragile. The Stoics would remind you that opinion is outside your control. Praise is outside your control. Agreement is outside your control. If your confidence depends on these variables, your emotional state will fluctuate constantly. Approval brings relief. Disagreement brings doubt. Silence creates anxiety. Seeking validation sends a signal. It suggests that your judgment is incomplete without confirmation. It reveals hesitation beneath your words. The more you seek agreement, the less self-contained you appear. People sense when someone is comfortable standing alone in their reasoning and when someone is searching for reinforcement. This does not mean rejecting feedback. It means distinguishing between learning and dependency. You can listen without needing endorsement. You can refine your thinking without requiring applause. Internal authority grows when your decisions are grounded in principle, not in popularity. Ask yourself how often you soften your position to avoid disapproval. How often you adjust your tone to secure acceptance. How often you hesitate to move forward until someone else confirms your path. Each of these habits transfers power outward. Breaking this current requires tolerance for temporary isolation. Sometimes, clarity means standing without immediate support. When you become comfortable with that, your presence changes. You appear grounded because you are not negotiating your worth through approval. Now, we move deeper. Because true value does not emerge only by avoiding leaks. It is built through deliberate mental structure, practicing selective response. Not every stimulus deserves your energy. Not every message requires an immediate answer. Not every criticism needs correction. Not every invitation needs acceptance. Yet many people live as if every external input demands reaction. And that constant responsiveness weakens perceived stability. Selective response is not avoidance. It is filtration. It is the discipline of deciding what enters your attention and what does not. When you react to everything, you signal that everything has equal power over you. When you choose carefully where to engage, you signal hierarchy. And hierarchy reflects internal order. The Stoics trained themselves to pause before reacting. They understood that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies choice. Most people collapse that space instantly. Something happens. An emotion follows without examination. Words follow without restraint. Energy follows without evaluation. Selective response requires awareness of the dichotomy of control. You do not control what reaches you. You control whether you amplify it. You control whether you internalize it. You control whether you invest energy into it. That awareness alone shifts your presence. Consider the person who does not rush to reply, who listens fully before speaking, who chooses silence when a response would only escalate noise. That person appears measured, grounded, centered, not because they are passive, but because they are deliberate. When you respond selectively, your words carry more weight. Your reactions become rarer and therefore more meaningful. Emotional economy increases perceived authority. Restraint builds gravity. Breaking the habit of constant reaction takes discipline. It requires tolerating unfinished conversations, unanswered provocations, temporary misunderstandings. But over time, this discipline reshapes how you are perceived. You are no longer pulled by every external force. You are anchored, accepting what you cannot control. There is a kind of calm that cannot be faked. It appears when something goes wrong and the person does not collapse into complaint. When plans shift and the person adjusts instead of blaming. When uncertainty rises and the person remains steady. That calm is not indifference. It is acceptance. Most people exhaust themselves fighting what is already real. They argue with delays. They resist outcomes. They replay what should have happened. And in that resistance, they lose clarity. The more they push against the uncontrollable, the more agitated they become. And agitation erodes perceived strength. The Stoics built their philosophy around a single stabilizing distinction. What is within your control and what is not? You control your judgment, your actions, your response. You do not control events, opinions, outcomes, timing. When you confuse these domains, you suffer unnecessarily. Acceptance is not surrender. It is strategic alignment with reality. When you stop fighting facts, you recover energy. That energy can then be directed toward action instead of frustration. People notice this. They sense when someone is not easily shaken by external shifts. Think of the individual who faces a setback and does not dramatize it, who adjusts without announcing the injustice, who moves forward without broadcasting resentment. That posture communicates maturity. It signals depth. It reflects inner stability. Value increases when emotional turbulence decreases. Not because you suppress emotion, but because you understand where control begins and ends. When you accept what cannot be changed, you become less reactive and more intentional. Breaking the habit of resistance requires humility. You are not the architect of every outcome, but you are the architect of your conduct within it. That realization creates emotional gravity, and gravity draws respect without demanding it. Anchoring identity internally. When identity depends on external reaction, it fluctuates. Praise elevates you. Criticism destabilizes you. Silence creates doubt. But when identity is anchored internally, perception loses its power to disturb. Many people construct themselves through feedback. They become what is rewarded. They avoid what is questioned. Over time, their sense of self becomes a reflection of other people's expectations. This makes them adaptable but unstable. Without approval, they hesitate. Without validation, they shrink. The Stoics built identity differently. They define themselves by character, not by commentary, by principles, not by applause. They measured their worth by alignment with reason and virtue, not by reputation. Reputation belongs to others. Character belongs to you. Anchoring identity internally means deciding who you are before entering a room. It means acting from standards you have already examined. It means not adjusting your core values to fit the emotional temperature of the environment. This does not mean stubbornness, it means clarity. When you know your principles, you do not need to negotiate them constantly. You listen. You consider. You adapt intelligently. But you do not reshape yourself to avoid discomfort. People sense this stability. The individual who does not bend under mild social pressure appears grounded. The person who does not redefine themselves for acceptance appears reliable. Consistency in identity creates trust. The dichotomy of control applies again. You cannot control how others interpret you. You can control whether your conduct aligns with your chosen values. When alignment becomes your reference point, your presence strengthens. Breaking external dependence begins by asking a difficult question. If no one applauded, who would you still choose to be? The answer reveals whether your identity is anchored or drifting. Now we move from internal structure to visible behavior. Because value is not only internal, it becomes observable through how you act under pressure. Consistent conduct under pressure. Anyone can appear composed when circumstances are favorable. Anyone can speak confidently when there is no resistance. The true signal of value appears when pressure rises, when timelines tighten, when criticism intensifies, when outcomes are uncertain. Stability under those conditions is rare, and rarity increases perceived worth. Most people fluctuate with the environment. When things go well, they are calm. When tension appears, their tone shifts. Their decisions become reactive. Their patience narrows. Their standards weaken. This inconsistency reveals emotional dependency on circumstance. The Stoics trained precisely for this. They understood that adversity exposes structure. If your composure disappears under pressure, your stability was conditional. If your principles dissolve when challenged, they were preferences, not convictions. Consistent conduct does not mean emotional numbness. It means proportion. You feel stress, but you do not allow it to dictate behavior. You feel urgency, but you do not abandon clarity. You experience friction, but you maintain discipline. People observe this more than they admit. They notice who remains measured when others escalate, who continues delivering when others complain, who stays aligned when others shift positions for convenience. That consistency builds trust, and trust is one of the strongest forms of perceived value. When your reactions are predictable in integrity, you become reliable. Reliability signals strength. It communicates that you are not governed by mood or pressure. You are governed by principle. Breaking inconsistency requires preparation. It requires practicing restraint when stakes are low so that composure remains when stakes are high. Emotional discipline built in calm moments carries into difficult ones. Now that value is visible through stability, we refine it further, because not only actions, but words shape perception. Strategic restraint in speech. Words reveal more than information. They reveal stability, insecurity, clarity, and impulse. Many people dilute their presence through excessive speech. They fill silence out of discomfort. They repeat points for reassurance. They speak before thinking, and then think while speaking. The result is noise without weight. Strategic restraint in speech is not silence for the sake of mystery. It is measured expression. It is the discipline of saying what is necessary and nothing more. When you speak with intention, your words carry density. When you speak to relieve anxiety, your words scatter. The Stoics valued control over speech as a reflection of control over mind. If your thoughts are ordered, your speech will be precise. If your emotions are unchecked, your speech will overflow. Restraint signals internal organization. Excess signals internal turbulence. Consider the person who listens fully before responding, who pauses before replying, who does not interrupt to insert opinion. That person appears composed. Their words seem deliberate, and because they do not speak constantly, their voice gains importance when they do. Verbal economy enhances authority. It creates space for others to project meaning onto your silence. It allows observation before reaction. It prevents you from revealing insecurity through unnecessary explanation or overemphasis. This does not mean withholding truth. It means delivering it cleanly, without embellishment, without defensive tone, without emotional overflow. When your speech is aligned with thought and principle, it reinforces your internal structure. Breaking the habit of overspeaking requires tolerance for silence. Silence can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort does not require immediate filling. The ability to remain steady in quiet moments communicates confidence more effectively than constant commentary. Mastering emotional timing. There is a dimension of value that most people overlook. It is not what you say. It is not even what you do. It is when you choose to do it. Emotional timing reveals depth of control. Acting too quickly exposes impulse. Acting too late exposes hesitation. Acting at the right moment demonstrates discernment. Many people react immediately because silence feels uncomfortable. A criticism appears and they respond before thinking. A disagreement surfaces and they interrupt. A conflict arises and they rush to resolve it. Speed feels like strength, but often it is merely anxiety disguised as decisiveness. The Stoics understood that time is a strategic ally. They practiced delaying reaction long enough for reason to regain authority. When emotion rises, clarity decreases. When clarity decreases, decisions distort. The discipline of waiting is not weakness. It is calibration. Mastering emotional timing means resisting the urge to act from the first surge of feeling. It means allowing the initial wave to pass before committing to speech or behavior. In that pause, something important happens. The ego softens. The interpretation becomes clearer. The situation appears less absolute. People notice timing more than they admit. The individual who does not rush into confrontation appears grounded. The person who does not immediately defend themselves appears secure. The one who chooses the appropriate moment to speak appears deliberate. This is not manipulation. It is composure. Emotional timing also applies to ambition. Announcing plans too early can dissipate energy. Responding to opportunity too impulsively can create instability. Waiting too long can signal fear. The balanced path requires awareness of both impulse and inertia. Ask yourself how often you act to relieve discomfort rather than to advance purpose. Many reactions are not strategic. They are emotional releases. You respond because tension is uncomfortable. You speak because silence feels heavy. But discipline tolerates temporary discomfort in favor of long-term clarity. The dichotomy of control guides timing as well. You cannot control when situations arise, but you control when you respond. That choice alone shapes perception. It shapes outcomes. It shapes identity. When you master timing, your presence shifts. You are no longer pulled by the urgency of others. You are no longer pressured into immediate reaction. You operate on reasoned cadence, not emotional impulse. That cadence communicates maturity. Value increases when your actions feel intentional rather than reactive. When your speech arrives, measured rather than rushed. When your decisions appear considered rather than impulsive. Timing creates weight. In a world driven by immediacy, restraint in timing feels rare, and rarity signals strength. When you control not only what you do, but when you do it, your conduct gains precision, and precision builds authority without announcement. Emotional self-sufficiency. There is a level of value that emerges when you no longer rely on others to regulate your emotional state. Emotional self-sufficiency is not isolation. It is not indifference. It is the ability to remain internally balanced without constant reassurance, attention, or affirmation. Many people outsource their stability without realizing it. They depend on praise to feel confident. They depend on constant communication to feel secure. They depend on agreement to feel intelligent. When these external reinforcements disappear, anxiety appears. Their emotional state fluctuates with the presence or absence of others. The Stoics trained themselves differently. They understood that emotional dependence weakens freedom. If your calm depends on someone else's approval, you are not calm. You are temporarily comforted. If your confidence depends on consistent validation, it is not confidence. It is reinforcement. Emotional self-sufficiency begins with internal dialogue. When something goes wrong, do you immediately seek external comfort? When doubt arises, do you instantly look for someone to confirm your capability? Or can you sit with uncertainty long enough to reason through it? This capacity signals depth, the person who does not panic when alone, the one who does not collapse when affirmation is absent, the individual who can process disappointment internally before speaking about it. That stability communicates resilience. Self-sufficiency does not eliminate relationships, it strengthens them. When you are not dependent on constant reassurance, your interactions become cleaner. You listen without needing approval. You speak without seeking applause. You support others without expecting emotional repayment. Breaking emotional dependence requires practice. When discomfort appears, pause before reaching outward. Examine it. Identify its source. Ask whether it stems from wounded pride, unmet expectation, or simple fatigue. Often the need for external validation masks internal insecurity. The dichotomy of control applies here with precision. You cannot control how often others affirm you. You cannot control how consistently others respond. But you can control how much authority you give their response over your mood. That realization is liberating. Emotional self-sufficiency increases perceived value because it reflects independence. Not arrogance, but groundedness. You are not easily destabilized by silence. You are not shaken by delayed recognition. You are not governed by fluctuating attention. In a world where many seek constant reassurance, the person who remains internally steady stands out. Not because they demand respect, but because they do not require constant emotional support to function. When your stability originates within, your presence gains density. You move through situations without needing constant reinforcement. You contribute without seeking validation. You maintain clarity without external correction. Value grows where dependency decreases. And when emotional self-sufficiency becomes habitual, your authority becomes quiet, consistent, and unmistakable. Acting without announcement. There is a behavior that quietly separates substance from performance. It is the discipline of acting without announcing, making progress without broadcasting it, improving without advertising it, delivering without narrating the process. Many people speak about what they will do before they do it. They share intentions prematurely. They signal ambition loudly. And sometimes the announcement replaces the execution. The emotional reward of being seen as committed substitutes the harder reward of actually committing. The Stoics warned against this subtle trap. They emphasized action over declaration, character over commentary. When you speak less about your intentions and focus more on fulfilling them, something shifts. Your confidence becomes internal, not performative. Acting without announcement builds quiet credibility. People observe results over time. They notice consistency without self-promotion. They sense reliability because it does not need reinforcement through constant reminders. This behavior also protects your focus. When you announce every step, you expose yourself to external opinion before progress has matured. You invite noise into a process that requires concentration. Silence preserves momentum. There is strength in allowing outcomes to speak. When your work stands on its own, it communicates stability. When your discipline is visible through conduct rather than proclamation, it carries weight. You do not control how quickly others recognize your effort, but you control whether your effort is real. When effort is real and consistent, Recognition becomes secondary. The work itself becomes the signal. Now, everything converges. Value as gravity, not performance. At this point, something subtle should feel different. Value is no longer a performance strategy. It is not a collection of tactics designed to impress. It is structure. It is gravity. It is the cumulative effect of disciplined self-governance. When you stop explaining yourself impulsively, you reduce internal negotiation. When you stop reacting emotionally to small provocations, you increase composure. When you stop seeking validation, you regain your center. When you respond selectively, you protect your energy. When you accept what you cannot control, you stabilize your mind. When your identity is anchored internally, perception loses power. When your conduct remains steady under pressure, trust grows. When your speech is measured, your words gain density. When your actions speak louder than your intentions, credibility forms. None of these behaviors guarantee admiration. The world does not promise fairness. You do not control how quickly others perceive your value. But over time, consistency creates gravity. People are drawn to stability. They respect composure. They rely on predictability in character. Value is not declared. It is observed. It is built through repetition, through restraint, through proportion, through alignment between what you believe and how you act. It emerges naturally when you govern yourself instead of attempting to govern perception. Stoicism does not teach you how to be admired. It teaches you how to be internally ordered. And internal order reflects outwardly, not through noise, not through exaggeration, but through presence. You cannot force others to see you differently, but you can refine the structure of the person they encounter. And when that structure is disciplined, calm, and consistent, explanation becomes unnecessary. Value is not loud. It is steady, not reactive, but anchored, not performative, but principled. When your character gains weight, your presence does not need amplification. It carries itself.